One. All right, Justin, welcome to the Nova University podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people that are listening and to the people on the panel?
Yeah, sure. Let's see, where do I start? So, my name's Justin. I was born in New York City, but raised in Miami. Right around the age of 17, joined the military and have been in the military ever since. So I'm still an active duty service member. I spent about 12 years, my first 12 years stationed at Fort Bragg, which is kind of like not common to be stationed at one place for 12 years, but Fort Bragg will do that to you. If anybody knows, it's the
Yes.
the, set, the center of the universe. So I spent 12 years there. Just recently moved to Augusta, Georgia. Um, but I started investing in real estate maybe 3 years ago, 2019. I recognized that Fayetteville was a great market, super stable rental market, a lot of cash flow, and then there was also like a lot of resources and investor activity in Fayetteville. Like people kind of at my level, lots of veterans doing it. So kind of gave me the confidence to go ahead and get started. And we'll probably get into like the particulars of like how exactly we got started and what projects I did. But ever since then, we've been doing some fix and flips, some buy and hold, some short-term rental, some wholesale, all in the Fayetteville market. And since I moved to Augusta, I actually do nothing in the Augusta market, and it's just a shame because this is a great market as well, very similar to Fayetteville demographically. But I just don't know enough about it, and I kind of took the 12 years I spent in Fayetteville for granted because I know that place like the back of my hand, even though I'm 4 hours away now. So that's pretty much it, man. Building the business on the side. Kind of my whole reason for this whole thing is 2029. I plan on retiring from the military. And not to say that I don't want to work again, but I want to have options. So
Yes.
hopefully I have enough passive income, which it's not a hope, it's going to happen. It's already happened. I just have to sustain that for, 7 more years, which is a challenge. But yeah, just do that and have options. Either build my own company. I'm a tech guy, so I have a strong desire to build a tech company. But I can't do that if I have to work for the man,
Oh, yeah.
forever. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. There's a whole lot in there. So anything you guys want to ask, I'm an open book.
And when you were growing up, what was that like? Because I'm gonna guess you weren't a trust fund baby. Can you speak more about that?
No, I wasn't a trust fund baby, and that's a huge like motivation for me. I guess is like I do have a fire in my belly. I don't know who lit it up, and I don't know how to put it out. But just growing up, raised by a single mother, for the majority of the time as a kid, I had some siblings. I have a brother and a sister and two stepbrothers, and yeah, it's just tough. Like we definitely didn't have the worst life by any means, but we saw my mom struggle and like try to make ends meet. And so for me, it's trying to push that buck a little bit, further forward. My mom's from Dominican Republic. Her mom brought her over here from Dominican Republic, and I feel like every generation has like done their job to push the family forward, and it's my turn now.
Yeah. And whenever you were 17 or 18, what caused you to think like what were you thinking at that time? Because a lot of people, that's when they, you turn into a quote unquote an adult and you got to make these choices. What choice did you make? You're like, okay, I got to take serious about my life. But what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think I've always had the gift of clarity, right? So from a young age, I always wanted to be a soldier. As corny as that sounds, it was true. So like I would see folks in uniform and like kind of an embarrassing backstory. I was always like a little chubby kid, like I could never run and I was always out of shape. But I would see folks in uniform and I always looked up to them. So I knew that's something that I wanted to do. And right around my junior year of high school, I got serious about it and started getting in shape. And I just knew that like school wasn't for me. I was a C student, kind of purposefully. I was a C student. I just wasn't interested in the coursework. I wasn't engaged, and I got lucky. I had some good teachers that like recognized that about me and allowed me to go like on the work release program where I spent like half the day at school, half the day at work. And I just knew at 17 I was going to get out of there. So I actually enlisted in the army right when I turned 17. So it was like the summer of my junior year. I didn't go to basic training. immediately because I still had a school year to go to.
Yeah,
So I did what's called the delayed entry program. And then like 13 days after I graduated high school, I left.
yeah. And then, so with the delayed entry, did you go to basic or did you go to AIT?
No, so like some people, because I wasn't old enough, right? So like in August, I turned 17 and like the school year started like two
Ah,
weeks later. So I wish that I was able to go to basic training during the summer, but I was 16 for most of the summer, so I couldn't.
yeah,
So I enlisted, and they kind of like the recruiters just locked me in, and so my whole senior year, I knew I already had a job. Like I knew I was already in the army essentially. I just hadn't done any of the training.
yeah. And what was the biggest struggle did you have like during that age, like from in your early 20s?
Moving out of Miami, so um, anybody who's been in Miami or lived in Miami, it's a different beast. It may as well be a different country. I always joke like you should need a passport and know how to speak Spanish to live in Miami, but I grew up in Miami, most of my childhood and like my teenage life, and then I went to basic training in South Carolina, and then I moved, by myself with my girlfriend, soon to be wife at the time, to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and talk about a change of pace. So a little bit of culture shock there, but then also just being young, young kids living on your own, having to figure it out. So I don't think we particularly had many challenges there, but um, yeah, just moving away. And I guess also like I deployed soon after getting there. So that was a challenge for my wife. For me, it was more exciting and something I always wanted to do. But I bet if you asked her, she wouldn't share that that sentiment.
And oh, after all that, what got you into the whole entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, I still don't consider myself entrepreneurial. Maybe that's a bit of imposter syndrome. But really, like I mentioned earlier, like trying to drive the family, forward. I, I I think I just recognize that like stuff's not gonna happen by mistake. Like you're not gonna become a millionaire, by mistake. You're not gonna free your time by mistake. So you have to be like very intentional about everything you do. So I started looking for things that like I understood that I felt comfortable doing in order to supplement my income or like add to my income. So that kind of got me into it. And what got me into real estate specifically is I was at like a hail and farewell party. There were some people that I didn't even know that were leaving. Um, but I got invited to this party, and I had, I think me and my wife were talking about, at that point, I'd already bought my first house, not as an investor, just kind of like going out there, living the American dream, buying a house at 110% of its value with my VA loan. But we're gonna move, and I didn't know what to do with that house. We couldn't sell it because we wouldn't even break even. We'd have to bring money to the closing table. So I was like, God damn it, like I don't want to rent this thing. And I met a guy there who's like a landlord. He had like four properties, and he was telling me, he's like, hey man, matter of fact, download the Bigger Pockets app right now. And I don't know if they still have an app, but at that point they had an app. He's like, download it now. You need to get on there. And I was like, okay, fine. So I downloaded it, and I didn't even look at it for like a year. And then, dude, just randomly, I opened that thing up and started going through the forums. And I think it's because I was getting ready to move and I had to make that decision. And I was just blown away, man, by like some of the stuff that people were achieving. And yeah, I started listening to the podcast. I read the book. I think Coach Carlson, Chad Carlson, or whatever, he wrote "Retire Early with Real Estate." I read that book, and it like really resonated with me. There were some military stories in there, and I was just like, "Yeah, man, let's get it." I think that this is something that I can get behind.
Yeah. And I'm guessing your first book wasn't the purple book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of people say.
No, I read that book too soon after, and it didn't do it for me, man. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, and like the real estate gods will kill me for it, but it didn't really resonate with me, and I have to read it again just to see if it. Sometimes you read something at a later date and it clicks a little bit different, but maybe I just wasn't ready for it. But no, it definitely wasn't Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I did read it.
Yeah, okay. And then after you did get the Bigger Pockets app and you were reading the books, what actions did you take after that? What did you do with that house?
So we ended up renting it. And I don't look at that as like an intentional investor action because I was kind of forced into it. I didn't want to pay money at closing, but we did end up renting it and I learned a lot from it. So we we hired a property manager and everything went well. We only had one tenant and that tenant was there for 3 years. And it was just kind of cool to see like the mortgage being paid, on its own. And they moved out and everything was clean. They were good tenants, and it was like, oh man, this is kind of easy. But kind of in between there, I had been getting deep into bigger pockets, and sort of the action that I took was I ended up flipping a house, and that's sort of a big leap from nothing to flipping a house. But I had been saving money, kind of like you mentioned earlier. You're pretty frugal. I was the same way. So I had a bunch of money. I've been listening to Bigger Pockets. I had the itch. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, let's try this out, and I did. And once I did that, man, RJ was actually my contractor there and a mentor. Whether he knows it or not, he still is. But he we flipped a house and we were successful there. We made I think like $18,000, and I was like, holy crap, I don't want to do this ever again.
Okay. Well,
Seriously, no, seriously. It was good. We made a bunch of money, but
what was the
I
stress
spent a
of it?
lot. I spent a lot of time at the project,
Oh,
and I funded it myself. So I had my life savings like in that project, and thankfully, I was in the good hands of RJ. Man, RJ
yeah.
RJ could tell. RJ knew it. But RJ also knew that it was going to be a success the whole time, and so he kind of just like sit there and let me lament over
Yeah.
my stress. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm going to do the demo so that I can save some money, and I'll do the landscaping." And he's just like, "Whatever, dude, go ahead."
You
So,
know,
and it was,
he sees the success of you. It's not his money. It's like you just made a whole kid. You like it's all your time into one thing, right? Like all
yeah.
like so how much money did you save up for that?
I think the entire project was $78,000.
The
Um,
rehab? Okay.
the everything, like, yeah,
Okay.
purchase price and rehab altogether was about 78K. And so that was and still is a lot of money for me. So it stressed me out. And I stress myself out. I tend to do that. And so when it was all said and done, it was a success. But I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And I took a break. I took a break for like 5 to 6 months, and then I got back on the train, and I haven't hopped off since.
Okay. Oh, so what did you sell it as? How much did you sell it or how long did that take?
Yeah, so we sold it at 114,000, and RJ was also my agent for that one. And so I think we got it under contract. It was a different time. I think in 20 early 2020s when we put it on the market. We sold it in like 14 days, which was fast for the time. Um, we weren't originally going to sell it. I was actually going to burr it. You're
Yeah.
familiar with the burr, of
Yes.
course. So I was going to do the burr, but because I spent so much time at that project, like I started to like not like the neighborhood, and I'm like, man, I just don't even want to own the house in this neighborhood. And the ARV had gone up, the after repair value had gone up while we were doing the project. So I was like, RJ, like, would you list it? And he's like, yeah, man, we'll do it. So we ended up selling it for 114.
Nice. And what are some key lessons that you learned that you didn't know before? Other than you don't want to do that ever again.
No, that was a false lesson. That was just me like being overwhelmed. But I did end up doing it again a few more times. But if I had to pick out some key lessons there, it was probably like, hey, like leverage your contractors, the people who do this stuff for a living, let them do the work, right? Like I piecemealed stuff together, I'm like, hey, I want to save a few $100 on the demolition. So I'm going to hire a crew that I found on Craigslist to do the demolition. And then I'll let you come in and do your stuff. And that was a huge mistake, right? Because not that anything went wrong, but like the management overhead of like trying to piece all this stuff together was just additional stress that like I didn't really need. So find somebody, find a crew, find a team that can handle the job, and then let them do it and save yourself the worry. If the deal was really that tight, then you probably shouldn't have done it anyway.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Like you're putting so like a bunch of your like it's like two different brains working. Like someone does it one way and then you get another person to come in and you want them to do it this way. But then they have a whole different mindset. And if you just have like that one person doing everything, it'll be all set. And then what happened after that? So I know is that when you moved to Augusta or what happened after
No,
that?
no. So I deployed shortly after that. So I was out of the country for I think like 4 or 5 months, and then I came back. I told you I was like kind of taking a break from it, but then I came back and I was like browsing. I have a bad habit. I'm always on. I'm like on Zillow more than I am my Instagram feed, and Craigslist at the time. I don't do much Craigslist anymore, but I was on Craigslist, I think, and I saw a house pop up, and I was like, huh, this thing's nice, and the price is right. So I hit up the number that was on there, and like I don't even think I had money at that time. I'm trying to think back to what happened. Anyway, I went and I saw the house, and like I essentially locked it up in the parking lot because I'm like, this is a deal. Like, I can write this, every which way and it's a deal. So I locked it up, and RJ worked on that one as well. And that was a sweet deal. That was kind of a headache deal. But it was a good deal, and we fared pretty well.
How'd you raise the money for that one?
So interestingly enough, like I'm trying to think back to it because it was a little while ago, but there was a few things going on. So that first house that I lived in, the tenant had just moved out, and we decided to sell it. Right. Side note: I wish I would have never sold it, but we decided to sell it. So
Yeah.
that was an escrow to sell. And so we had some money there, and then we had also lent some money. I had a buddy at work who was getting into flipping, and he was flipping a house in not in Pinehurst, but somewhere up there in Moore County. And so his financing fell through at the last minute. So he's like, "Hey, Justin, do you have any money to lend me? Here's the deal, And I looked at it; it all made sense. I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I lent him money on that deal. So I had some money deployed there, and so I didn't have much. So essentially, I it had to be a perfect dance for like the rental to close and that money to come back in order for me to close on this next investment property. But I didn't feel comfortable there, so I did raise some money from my brother. So my brother had some money and he wanted to invest, so he invested 25K with me, and that's pretty much what I needed. My mom did too. She had like $7,000, and so she invested with me too. So I had that money come in, and then it all worked out. My rental property closed. I had the cash to do it all by myself at the end of the day, but I still brought on their money and gave them a return as
Yeah.
well.
And can you speak more about that, like borrowing other people's money, and how does the process work? Like whether it's like family members, you can do that like easily, but like using other people other than family, how does that work?
Yeah, so I don't raise a ton of money, right? Like I'm like afraid of leverage. I try to cash roll everything. I do like use lines of credit and stuff, but I can't speak to that a little bit, right? So I did lend money to my friend, so I got to see it from two different perspectives. So I'm not okay with like doing hey, let's just handshake on this and you give me 10% when it's done. So when I gave money to my friend, essentially what we did was at the closing table, the closing attorney prepared a promissory note, and basically like an official IOU, and here are the terms of the loan, and they attached it to the property, the deed, or I was the first deed of trust on the property. So essentially, I had a lien on the title. So all that was done at the closing table. Like I didn't have to do anything. The attorney generated that paperwork. We signed, and then when it was time to close, I had to release that lien on the property. So say, hey, yep, he's paying me back with the proceeds of this money. The lien is released. Everything's good. With the family stuff, I handled it a lot of the same way. Now, my family's debt was unsecured, so I did not. Um, there wasn't enough money for them to tie up the property, like cloud title or whatever with the property. So we did do a promissory note. We did sign it. We did get it notarized. Um, but I handled it the same way, right? Like there was essentially a joint venture from with my brother. You get X amount of equity. I kept him updated throughout the process. I showed him all the underwriting, showing him where all the funds were coming from, what was the plan, yada yada yada. So the only difference there was the debt was unsecured, so we handled the promissory note outside of the closing table.
Gotcha. And what's the difference between doing that and doing a syndication route? If you know more about that.
Yeah, I won't speak to syndications because I haven't done it. I am familiar with it, but the way I understand syndications is essentially a crowd fund, um, for a specific asset, maybe like an apartment building or something, and you're pulling together money from limited partners who are completely passive, and there's like regulations and stuff. But
Oh
I've
yeah.
never done it, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah, gotcha. And when you did start to move to like Augusta, what was going through your head with all your properties and your business? What was it like? Oh shoot, like man, like am I gonna lose everything? Like that's what would go with the regular person's head. Like you're moving out of here?
That's a good question. So that's a really good question because at that point when it came time to move to Augusta, I had acquired 4 properties. One of them was a short-term rental that I was self-managing, and then 3 were long-term rentals that were managed by a property manager, by 3 different property managers at the time. Now it's 1. But I did think about that for a while, and I wondered how I was going to do it. But I'll say that it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So like, I still continue to manage the short-term rental from a distance. Um, but before, when I was at, it's not answering your question. Like, to answer your question, I felt uneasy. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I'm a young dude. There's the internet. There's people. I know people. I'll pay people. Whatever. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because like I was always like so involved in my properties. I was kind of like and ended up being hands on. But when I left, I couldn't do that anymore. I had to it forced me to find other people to do that for me and leverage other people for that. So it's taken a lot off of me by being long distance.
And what helped out most towards it? Like, I guess you leveraged to other people. How did you do that? Like, did you get more property managers, or did you get a team built over there? Like, what'd you do?
Yeah, so kind of like you're doing right now, and you're going around and you're meeting a bunch of investors in Fayetteville. I did similar things. I attended Pints and Properties, like thank God for Shelby, for putting that stuff together. And I met some folks, RJ was a big help for me. That time I had met some like handymen or maybe under other investors. And I was just like never afraid to ask, not necessarily ask for help, but ask like, hey, maybe like, how would you handle this? Or I'm trying to come up with a specific example, but a lot of times people fear like, what are you gonna do? You run a short-term rental from, Augusta. Like, what happens if the cleaner doesn't show up? Well, like, then find another cleaner. Like at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. You'll figure it out. You're paying somebody to clean the house. Somebody's gonna come clean the house. So it's stuff like that. But definitely like just the networking and understanding, being around the right people to be able to ask those questions to or lean on them was helpful.
Nice. And you do short-term rentals. What made you want to do an Airbnb and all that?
It was a big experiment for me. There was so we got another property under contract, separate from the last one, the last 2 I was telling you about, and it was in a neighborhood that like uh, I don't really like. I like to stay like in the B class properties, but this was like in a C class neighborhood, and I was like kind of uneasy about it, but it was cheap enough for me to experiment, right? And because I was doing stuff with my own money, I had a little bit of confidence, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to experiment on this. STRs are all the rage. Everybody's talking about how the cash flow is amazing. Um, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. And so I did, and I did that 2 years ago, and we've still. It's I only have one, and that thing is awesome. It turbocharges the cash flow for sure.
Yeah. And with doing all that, like, what tools did you acquire and you were like, whoa, this is amazing. That made your life easier to do all this process? Because again, yes, you can get by with what you got, but there's like, you can do way better. Like you said, you're doing ads. For the beginner, like what kind of tools, and for the expert, what kind of tools should they use to basically further their process and success?
Yeah, I'll speak specifically to short-term rentals, right? So from
Yeah.
the beginning, I've been self-managed, and the reason I did that was because this was a big experiment for me, right? So like, it's not much of an experiment if I just go the same route as everybody else is going because I just get their same results. So I wanted to try something different. Being a tech guy, I just dove deep into like what systems could help me, and I actually paid to be a part of a mastermind or a coaching program called the Host Camp, run by Rob Abasolo.
Hmm.
I think now he's like the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, but I joined his coaching program with only one unit, right, and like really no intent to grow, right. But what I learned there was how to leverage tools like a property management system, how to leverage automated calendar systems to manage your cleaners, um, guest communications, reviews, and like all this stuff. So like I run that one property as if I had a 10 unit portfolio. But some of the specific tools I use for that is I use Guesty, and Guesty kind of brings all my calendars together, and I handle all my guest communications, check-ins, checkouts. smart locks are programmed automatically from that. I use Turnover BNB to manage my cleaner schedule. So every time somebody books, my cleaner automatically gets notified, and I have a secondary cleaner on there. If she denies the job, it automatically goes to her. You name it. And then I build a good relationship with a handyman there who I can call at any moment, who can come and fix stuff. So those are just a few things that I leverage. But the coaching program was huge for me,
Yeah.
uh, to kind of learn all that from the beginning.
Yeah. And for the handyman part, like, how did you find that? I'm guessing you didn't go to Home Depot at 4 a.m. in the morning and just wait
Nope.
until one of them showed up.
You want to know how I found my handyman?
Yes.
Was we sold a flip, and the buying the buying real estate agent, the buyer's agent, tore us up on the due diligence request. And RJ was busy, and the handyman who serviced, I paid an arm and a leg for to service all those due diligence requests. I'm like, I like the way this dude works. And so I paid the invoice. I have his contact information, and I built a relationship with him. So out of a headache of working on all my due diligence requests, yeah, that's how we did it.
Gotcha. So you basically just found out people that you like over time, putting yourself out there a lot more. I like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And
go ahead.
let me actually roll back to the short term rental stuff, because I skipped over like a pretty important part.
What is that?
I didn't join Rob's group immediately before doing this. Before doing that, I hired a virtual assistant that was out of the Philippines, who claimed to have a system, to run Airbnbs. And she ran it all for me for 12%. She did. She really did. She used to work for Airbnb, like a lot of them did. And she put together like a good baseline for me. But, cultural differences, language barriers and stuff, like just over time, I'm like looking at what I'm paying her to do this stuff, and she did great. But I was like, I can do this myself. And at that point is when I joined Rob's
Mhm.
coaching program to take it over myself. So that's a big piece. And I think that was huge for us, because that she set us on a good trajectory.
Yeah. And how does that work?
Just
Like
like,
she's like in the Philippines. How would she get like a handyman and all that other stuff to like happen
I
when she's
provide
gone?
yeah, I provided her with all my contacts, and I
Wow.
trusted her with, she had access to all my stuff as it pertains to the short term rental. And I have a really good relationship with my cleaner. She's a friend, first, and a cleaner second for us. So she just has their contact information and contacts them directly. And I also gave her, like, I empowered her to like just make decisions, right? Because sometimes I'm at work and I don't have my phone or something, and she has to make decisions. So I always message like, "Hey, you're empowered to make decisions, and then we'll work it out on the back end. If it wasn't the right decision, which she didn't always make the right decision, we just work it out." And you know, lessons learned.
Yeah, I do that with my cleaner all the time. I'm like, because I put her above my guest, right? I don't care if the guest complains. I just want to make sure that my cleaner that's a part of my team is like is safe and like doing her thing, and that
Yeah,
like I take uh my my cleaner's opinion first, then the guest, because and she's the one that taught me like, hey, some of these guests are gonna lie, right? Just so they can get their money back because they'll complain about the simplest stuff, and like she'll say like these are the Karens of like of Airbnb. Just don't put any mind to them because they're just gonna complain. But I'll show you evidence that hey, look, this is what happened and all this. I'm like, hey, I'm cool with whatever you say, right? You handle
yeah.
it. I'm just gonna sit back, right, and pay you to do everything. And if anything happens, right, just let me know if if they tries to put one on you or whatever. But again, calendars and everything, setting it up, that's all good. And for information wise, right? Uh, what tools do you use for both Airbnb and just long-term rentals? Either it's seeking properties or just analyzing it. What do you use?
So for looking for properties, that's a whole beast of a conversation, because we do direct to seller marketing. But
Yeah.
analyzing properties, I started off using the Bigger Pockets calculator, and I still do from time to time. But I use DealCheck.io, for my deal analysis. And the one reason I like this because it has a mobile app. But how did I learn how to like analyze that stuff? I learned that just from listening to Bigger Pockets and reading forums and YouTube University about understanding like what a deal should look like, and what makes sense. But then I just plug all those figures into a calculator like that, and run it every which way conservatively, and if it checks out, then we act.
And what are some resources that you would like recommend for people? Like you said it once, like the bigger pockets forums, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So the forums are good for like specific questions. Like, so sometimes I'll go in, or if I had like questions about a vendor or something, like I might go in and Google it, and then you'll see like the bigger pockets forums. A lot of times, it's the first thing that comes up. Excuse me, but I mean, topics. That's a tough one because there's a million ways to get to the finish line in real estate. But anything you're interested in, anything you're thinking about, long-term rentals, short-term rentals, like just YouTube search, right? And like YouTube's great at it, and it'll send you down a rabbit hole that like you could probably never get out of. If going in there and just taking other people's content and applying it to you. A big resource, and this guy doesn't need his head inflated anymore. Alex Felice, a big resource for me when I first started out was his blog, brokeisthechoice.com,
Oh yeah.
because he I mean, he puts everything out there, and like every single deal he had done, on the single family side, and I think also on the multifamily side now, he had the HUDs on there, and he explained every little detail and like who lent him the money and how he did it, how he split it. So like I looked at things like that, and I was like, to me, it was just cheat codes, right?
Yeah.
And so you find those gems, on the internet, but it typically starts with a good, you know, YouTube search or a Google search.
Mine is it was just Reddit, right? Like I was a kid, I'm like, oh, Reddit's pretty cool because these are real people, not just advertisement, saying
Yeah,
like, hey, buy this course. I'm like, let me see what people think about this course. Like I try, I don't want to be a pessimist, but I really do like looking at the 2-star, 1-star. I learned from RJ, right? He was like, hey, the best property managers are not the ones that are 5 stars. It's the one that are usually like 2 stars, 3 stars, because guess what? The only people that are reviewing on those Google websites for those property managers are the tenants, right? So if you want to be landlord friendly, RJ just told me, hey, find someone that has like a 3-star rating on like Google for being a landlord. That's your
that's a
best.
good that's a good trick, man. That
Yeah.
guy's full of nuggets.
Oh yeah, I love him. I call him my mentor as well. Like every day, I'm like, dude, how do you do this? How do you do that? He's like, man,
Yeah.
like if I was 20 years old, oh my God, we just keep talking like that. And what
Yeah.
is a piece of advice that you would give someone that's starting out in the field of entrepreneurship? And I know you
Um,
said that you don't like calling yourself an entrepreneur, but guess what? In everybody's eyes,
yeah,
you are above average entrepreneur. I'll tell you that for sure.
sure. I appreciate that. I would say for me, one of the most empowering things was saving money, right? Like I know you can leverage other people's money. You don't need money to get into real estate. That's been proven time and time over again, right? But as soon as you can, um, I wouldn't say wait on it, but as soon as you can, save money, right? And have good reserves, because that the reserves will bail you out of a lot of situations, right? Each one of my long-term rentals, we set aside about $5,000 in an account, and I just never look at it ever again. And some people may say that's excessive, but when a fridge breaks or HVAC breaks, I'm not like pulling my hair out trying to find out where the money's coming from, or leveraging a credit card, or asking for money, or letting the tenant go without an AC. We're just taking the money that we had already set aside and putting it in there. So the advice I would have is save aimlessly. And I hate giving advice, but this is what I do. I would just save aimlessly, right? Until you know what to do with that money, and then you could point that gun somewhere and shoot it. I think a strong capital position gives you a lot of options.
Gotcha. Jack here has a question. Jack, you don't have to physically raise your hand. There's a
Yeah,
button in the Zoom that has a
yeah.
raise.
This Zoom, I'm not really used to. But so Justin, I like how you brought up like the startup capital stuff like that. So I'm kind of in that boat. So personally, what did you find more success in, or more of a confidence level in? Was it the flips or the rentals?
Yeah, definitely the flips gave me more confidence that I could handle more of the operations, because the rentals you can buy turnkey rentals. My first rental was a turnkey rental. I lived in that house and then I moved, but the I got to see how the sausage was made, with the flip or with the renovation, because we didn't intend to flip it to begin with. So as far as value to like long term investing, the flip was great because those same principles apply even if you're going to do the Burr method and go like renovate a house and then refinance later on. All that stuff applies. So if you understand how to work with a contractor, or if you do the work yourself, whatever, if you understand all the mechanics there, you can kind of do it all, in that market.
Yeah, because I know I had been wanting to start out like getting into real estate, the flips and stuff like that. I do like as mentioned earlier, so I do finished carpentry. So, and I have a lot of connections with other trades and stuff like that. That's why the flips always kind of like interested me a little more. The rentals I wasn't so sure about, but I just wanted to get your advice on that real quick, just from your personal
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. And I just want to say you have a huge competitive advantage, like having those relationship with those trades and you being a contractor yourself, man, you're like, you'd be ahead of the game as soon as you start. So that's one of my biggest pain points is, finding that resource.
Yeah. And Justin, what was the biggest mistake? What do you think the biggest mistake first like an entrepreneur can make? Like the first time, I'm butchering the question. What's the biggest mistake a first time investor or entrepreneur can make?
That's a tough one, man. It's cliche, but like not getting started,
Yeah.
and by getting started, I don't mean you need to like hop into a flip right away, but like, you're a good example of this is getting around the right people, starting to form your circles, is action, in my opinion. Bringing value to other people, just being a fly on the wall for other people, taking out the trash, whatever, like
Yeah.
just take action, right? Little by little. But also I think so action's important, but before you take the action is knowing where you want to go, right? I told you I had the gift of clarity. Like I think I know where I want to go, and that changes the more I learn. But have an end in mind, right? Because if not, I think it's harder. You're kind of aimless, right? So if you have a strategic end in mind, you can kind of backwards plan from there and see what it takes, and you can be really intentional about what you do. But like action coupled with a vision, in a sense, is good. If you go into it without it, I think it's easy to get lost, especially here. There's a lot of shiny objects in this
Yeah.
industry.
Of course.
Um,
And do you have like a favorite productivity hack that you do as like a like that helps you like do everything that you do right now? Because a lot of people, they have their morning routine. Like, what do you do that's like that you say like this helps you out the most?
yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a hack, because it's come like more as a necessity for me. But I wake up really early. I wake up at 4:30, and it's not to swing kettlebells like Jocko, but it's to get some work done, right? Because at 8, 9 o'clock, I have to be at work, and I'm there for a while. So I do wake up early. I don't necessarily have like a morning ritual where I meditate and journal. I have done that in the past, and I think it's beneficial. But sometimes I don't have time for it. Sometimes I just wake up, get to work and exercise. Man, I kind of have like I have a mental graph in my head. Like the busier I get, the more important the exercise becomes. So
Yeah.
like I never, there are times where I don't feel like doing it, or I let work get the best of me and I don't do it. So I'm not perfect in that aspect, but definitely just keeping physical. I think it's just good for the brain.
Oh yeah, I agree. And going back to with the real estate process, what was the biggest challenge you faced with real estate?
My own mind, man. And I still face it today, right? Like imposter syndrome for me is huge. I still don't consider myself an entrepreneur, like I am a real estate investor. I know that by this point, but um, getting out of my own way, right? Like I heard a talk by who's the guy who wrote The Miracle Morning?
Hal Elrod.
Hal Elrod. Last year, I went to VPCon and he was the keynote speaker there. And one of the things that stuck with me there was he was talking about like, why not me? Like you see all these people on stage, or you see these people who make tons of money, and you look at them and you put them on this pedestal, but like, why not you?
Yeah.
So, in your own head, in my own head, that's been my biggest challenge, and I still work through it every single day, in growing in like any entrepreneurial journey, so to speak, is getting out of my own way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And do you face FOMO as well? Like fear of missing out?
For sure, man. For sure. I consume a lot of content. I read and I research. And yeah, definitely, man. You see shiny objects and you want to chase them and you have fear of missing out. 100%, man. That happens. And that's where the vision's important, right? That's where like knowing where you want to be is important because I consistently ask myself, and sometimes I slip and I let it like, I start chasing something and then I'm like, wait a minute, why are you chasing that? What are your goals? And I have this conversation with myself is always being intentional. Is this
Yeah.
driving you closer to where you want to be? Yes, no, maybe so, but definitely, man, FOMO is huge, especially in this age where we're just consuming a ton of media, and I'm no different. I consume all that stuff, and I'm intrigued and entertained by all of it, and I want to do all of it.
Yeah. In my head, I'm like, I noticed that whenever I hopped on Instagram and I was like, this is all brain rot because you just see the positives and everything. Don't really see like how they got there or the struggle. I'm like, wow. But if I put it to the side, right, only use it for posting my own things, then it's more beneficial for me because when I first like used it, it was more like jealousy, more like, wow, why can't that be me, right? What am I doing wrong? Well, what I'm doing wrong is I'm sitting here moping about, oh, these guys are way better. Oh man. But when I first put that to the side, and again, birds that flock together, or whatever the quote is, right? Birds, like a group of birds, something, right?
Birds of a feather flock together, or something
Yes,
like that.
yes, that quote, right? I always forget how to say it, but it doesn't help that you're with negative people as well. And did you face it as well? Did you have to get rid of some people in your life that were just like not
Yeah,
useful not useful, but like not just bringing you down, not helping you at all?
yeah. I can't say that like I had to get rid of many people. I definitely would. I've always been kind of picky about who's in my circle, and I have like people and groups of people in my life who play different roles. Like there's a lot of family friends that play a different role. Like they're not an entrepreneurial group, but they're definitely serve a purpose in my life, and I get tons of value out of them. But no, I never really had to cut anybody off. But it is true, like who you hang around with is kind of the product you'll become, and that works to your advantage, and also it's kind of a curse as well, right? Because when you speak about FOMO, you get around some of these investor circles and that's where you see a lot of that. Like I'm in a mastermind, the War Room Mastermind with a bunch of veterans who do real estate. And I just got off of the meeting with them. And sometimes, Sundays I have nothing to talk about and I listen to them and these guys are like crushing it, right? So I'm like, man, what am I doing? It makes you want to act.
Yeah,
So there's also that too, right? Like very positive influence, but it may force you to do things you don't really intend to do. So no, we never really. I never really had to cut anybody off. I typically cut people off if they're not a good force in my life anyway. But I wouldn't say I changed the circles much. But I did meet a lot more investors and put myself around a lot more investors in addition to the people I already enjoyed being around.
gotcha. Yeah, you found the better people that can help you out. And how did you a lot of people want to know is that how did you combine your work life, right? Like your regular 9 to 5, right? Towards your side business, your real estate. How did you because you're not only are you managing your own Airbnb, you're also managing but you have the systems in place, but how did you do like it what like mentally and physically with all this?
Chaos, dude. It's chaos. Sometimes better than others, but there's no easy answer, right? And I think it boils down to time management and where you're spending your time. And I'm still like terrible at it. Like I still want to sit down and watch Netflix, with the
Yeah.
family. But you make sacrifices. None of it's pretty. None of it feels good. It's all uncomfortable. It sucks. Like that's just my take on it. I'm not a super organized person. Like naturally, I'm not like a checklist person or any of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just constantly like staying above water. Um, but it's mentally, I've made that sacrifice. I already know that, I either have to get better at managing my time or continue to struggle, right? So every day I kind of try to get better at that. But it's not an option for me, right? Like I'm in the military for however much longer. I have a contract that takes me up to a certain point, but then I also intend to retire. I don't know, man. Better figure it out. Suck it up. So I don't know if that's the answer you guys wanted to hear, but it sucks. A lot of it sucks.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect answer. Like a lot of people, they think that, oh, it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? But listen, like it's okay to eat dirt, right? To like live like that, to like basically have the struggle. It's a good thing. And I know because I'm like, man, like I don't have time to watch like anything or play anything, like play no video games, not doing. And I'm cool with it because guess what? Not only am I also in the military, I'm also doing like podcasts. I'm also doing my real estate. I'm also like doing a bunch of other stuff that I don't have time to, not keywords not enjoy, but I do enjoy what I like doing because that's my purpose. But it's just that these things that are made to have that dopamine flow, it's not just a part of your life anymore. And you just put that to the side. Like I think I only make like I watch like the new Game of Thrones like every week. Just that's the only, I guess, quote unquote fun thing I do. And that's because I enjoy it. That's what I get. I basically like reward myself for working as hard as I do, I guess. And then uh just one video wouldn't hurt anything. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a struggle too. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, like people think it's rainbows, but you have to eat like, peanut butter sandwiches or whatever, and then get to where you want to be. Uh, Matt, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. Just going back on what you said a little bit. The when you were talking about, you're in all these investor circles and everything, and I was just curious about how you got affiliated with them. And then I just had another question after that, but I just wanted to hear your answer for that first, please.
Yeah, so specifically with the War Room Mastermind, I had been consuming a lot of Dave Perret's content. He runs a Facebook group called Military to Millionaire, and I saw him post something about the War Room Mastermind, and I thought it was interesting. So I DM'd him. He sent me information, and I joined. So that's how I got into that one, and that was kind of a big hurdle for me because it was a paid mastermind, and I was like super against paying for education at the time,
Yeah.
or paying for any
Okay,
sort of
yeah,
like paying for any sort of mentorship. But it was cheap enough at the time where I'm like, you know what, it's X amount of money for the year. I'm gonna commit to it, and if I don't like it in a year, it's not gonna change my life. So let's try it. And it's one of the best things I've ever done because I've benefited a lot from it. I've been in it for 2 years now. And then I also last year I went to BPCon, and this year in about a week I'm going to Flip Hacking Live.
Mhm.
But going to meetups, like local meetups, pints and properties, or going to conferences that are in your area or maybe not even in your area, it's huge, man. Like it's really big. Even if you don't think that you've done a lot, it's just really good to be around a lot of those
mm,
folks in that environment. People have a lot to offer there.
Yeah,
I
and
got you.
I can agree with that because uh to a year ago or two, I paid for this mastermind. I guess you can call it a mastermind, just a group of guys. Like, don't get me wrong, guys, but a mastermind is just again like it's like this: a group of guys just talking about their what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it, and like so one person can be like, "Oh, I didn't know you can do that." So it's like things that you figure out. I call it like the one that I'm trying to build is called the round table, right? It's just a bunch of guys having their own ideas and like helping each other's businesses however they can. But I joined this one called the Bulldog Mindset by John Sonmez because I always watched his YouTube videos since I was 15. And he sent me an email one day saying, hey, like, a mass email saying like he's doing this program, a mastermind group. And if you want to join, I'm like, shit, I didn't like, $2,000. I barely had that. But I'm like, this is like an opportunity that I would like to know. And when I joined it, it's not like he was teaching like real estate stuff that I already knew, right? But when I put myself, but he has these meetings every week that I'm still a part of. Uh, it's just that you have these guys. It's for some odd reason you get this energy as well, but you can also when you talk about what you're doing, you get that eureka moment, like, oh shit, I didn't
Yeah.
know I can do this. Or when you are talking about, somebody else can interrupt by saying, hey, wait, did you plan on doing this? And then it's just like, whoa, I didn't think about that, right? So that's why those types of groups do help. But if you can, I would recommend going like the free route first, or like again, like what you said, Justin, go to your local meetups before you even go to like the BP con. I'm ashamed to like say like I haven't went to the BP con yet, or Flip con yet. I didn't even know Flip Hacking Live was a real thing. So
Yeah.
until like a month ago, and they told me about it, I was like, what? That's real? Shit. All right, let
Yeah.
me so right now, like what the best thing I would recommend people doing is saving up for those events. Like now that you heard about it, save up like $20 each paycheck, because not only do you get to pay for the whole ticket for it, but you also pay for the hotel and you also pay for the food that you meet up with people. So you'll be set for that. So right now I would say budget for those events. And if you can go to like your local events and talk to people and see what they're doing or how they feel, or, like build those connections that you can that are free for now, or join a
Mhm.
mastermind group that's free or cheap in general. And then you'll just
Yeah.
blow up, and you'll be like someone like Rich Aubrew that we had a while ago. You know Rich, right, Justin?
Yep.
And
Yep.
he was very content, like he was like really like questioning like uh this mastermind group that's like a lot of money. But then he told us that it was the best thing he's ever done, because not only you are also putting yourself in a place where these people that also put in their money, it's like a VIP area, right? Where it's the same mindset or even better. And I've always heard this quote where like you want to put yourself, you want to be the stupid guy in the group of that are really smart. So that's what I kind of see as a mastermind group. Like you're putting yourself out there to those that have that VIP card and they can do it, and you separate yourself from what you from your younger self. You know what I mean? You're actually measuring to yourself, and when you put yourself out there to basically have that VIP card, now you're in a level where you can actually increase by the people around you. So yeah. And what was your second question, Matt?
Yeah, so my second one was I know like we talked a little bit about like well investors obviously, but I was just curious about your opinion like on my idea of saving up about like 20,000 before I move in on a property and getting a loan and everything. And I was just curious like because for Haben, one of his things is like use other people's money for everything. And I was just curious like what you would suggest too, because you seem like you have a ton of properties in Fayetteville and everything. So I just want to hear your opinion on it. Do you think I should wait a little bit longer to save up more money or try to go in
No,
now?
no, I wouldn't necessarily like wait a little bit longer. I'm like I said earlier, I'm not against leverage. I understand the value in it. I'm against it for my personal situation, but it's definitely powerful, right? With like $20,000, you might be able to get into a deal. You might be able to get into a partnership. You might be able to lend to somebody, whatever that is. I would recommend doing it, right? But the most important thing for you is like ensuring you understand what you're getting into. Make sure you understand the deal. Make sure that the underwriting makes sense. And what I mean by underwriting is like analyze that deal and make sure not that you can't lose because there's risk, but the cool thing about real estate is you can almost look at a deal and if it's good enough, it's hard to lose. So yeah, do it. Take on hard money, take on other people's money, whatever it is. Just make sure objectively you look at that deal and it makes sense every which way you look at it, right? Have somebody
Mm,
else look at that deal and so maybe somebody who's more experienced, right?
mm,
Or don't be afraid to partner with somebody either, right? Because if you go in and you find a local investor who's very experienced and you brought him that deal, or you just brought him 20 grand and he gives you, 10% of the profits, 20% of the profits, it may not seem like a lot, but what you're going to learn there is going to
his
be,
experience.
yeah, and you're
Mm,
going to keep that with you forever, and it kind of reduces your risk profile a little bit. But yeah, man, I wouldn't wait much longer. Like the longer you wait, the further away you get from ever doing it. But certainly underwriting the deal is important, right? So however you fund it, just make sure you actually have a deal.
Yeah.
yeah, I feel I got you. Thank you.
To me, waiting
You're
is
welcome.
like slowly peeling off a band-aid. So it hurts. You just keep on thinking about it. You just want to get it over with. Uh,
Mm.
and what's the lesson that you learned this past year, Justin?
What's the lesson that I learned this past year? That's a good question. Like it's all along the theme of like getting out of my own way, right? But
Yeah.
really just like believing in myself, right? I've given a lot of money away in partnerships and time, and I just told Matt to go partner with somebody, and I do mean that. But a lot of times I think I need somebody else to like come on and validate what I'm doing, even though like I know I have experience, I know the deal makes sense or whatever. I might bring some people on, and I gave away too much too soon to some of those partners. So a lesson for me this year, big time, was learning how to structure those partnerships better and really knowing what value I bring to the table. And again, I'm always learning, so I'm consistently like fixing that. But that was big for me. And what's cool is like I set out this year intent on building partnerships with people, right? Because I can only do so much for myself, and it's cool because I've seen some lessons being learned from that. I also like have passed on deals, right? And I just DM'd you about a deal that I passed on, and I'll look
Yeah.
at it in 6 months and be like, God damn, I'm dumb, right? So I've passed on deals that I wasn't confident enough on, right? Because I underwrite too conservatively. And I always go back, man. And it's, hindsight's 2020, but I always go back and I look at those deals and like I ruin my day because I'm like, God damn it, man. I could have, I had that deal in my pocket. And most recently, I'll tell you about a short-term rental that it was off market. It was in the North Georgia mountains. And I've been going back and forth with the seller. We finally negotiated to bring the purchase price down to $500,000. And I was underwriting and like, it just still didn't make sense, cash flow wise. And maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't, right? But this is the way I look at it. A few months later, I look back at that house on Zillow and it sold for 575. So like, it's like I look at stuff like that and I'm like, dang, man, I know I didn't lose 75 grand, but there's opportunity cost there for sure.
Yeah, man.
And it's because I didn't believe in myself there, like I didn't trust my own gut because it was a bigger number for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's your own head gets in the way and you're,
Big time.
yeah. And what is the worst advice you were ever given?
Worst advice I was ever given. I don't know. I don't really listen. I'm hard headed in that sense. Like, but that's a tough one. I don't like advice period, but like I don't like the just like scale infinitely, scale fast, fucking 10x this and Grant Cardone. I listen to him. I like his personality and all that stuff, but like, damn, man, you don't have to do that stuff aimlessly. So like people have given me that advice. I wouldn't say it's the worst advice. I think that if I would have taken that advice, maybe I'd be further along, but it just doesn't apply to my life, right? Like my lifestyle and where I want to be and my goals. It's not for me. So it's not the worst advice, but by any means, but just kind of like on the spot thinking about it, like I think that's the worst general advice to give anybody, right? Because it really just depends on that person and their goals and what it is they're doing. Because it's super easy to get over leveraged in this industry and hurt yourself.
Yeah, I can feel that. And what do you think the greatest accomplishment that you've done in your life so far?
Accomplishment in my life. There's some deep questions here, dude.
Oh yeah.
That's tough, man. But I guess just deciding to get started, right? Deciding to start this company, deciding to do something a little bit different, and realize that I'm taking some risk and continue to take that risk and educate myself. And I have my family and all that stuff that I'm really proud of as well, and that's important to me. But just getting started and pushing this buck forward. I'm really intent in getting where I want to be by 2029. So just
2029.
tirelessly,
Okay.
tirelessly getting after that.
Gotcha. And what are your core values that you live by?
I mean, that stuff, like I don't have anything written on a wall, like, like integrity, self-service, honor, and all that stuff. But I fundamentally, like, I enjoy being genuine. I enjoy being what I think is a good person and open. Anybody who needs help, right? And that's, I'll talk about this in a little bit, but anybody who needs help, I like to open my books to them, right? Like anybody who's really interested in this stuff, I enjoy sharing because so many people did that for me, right? And some people did it without knowing, right? They just opened their information to me. So I enjoy doing that. I don't know if that's a core value, but it's kind of who I am, being genuine and being helpful. But I don't have like a set of, mission statement or anything that we live by. And if my company was a little bit bigger, maybe I would. But yeah,
you're
pretty much it.
You're a giver.
I think Jaden had.
Jaden, do you have
I
a
do
question?
enjoy that.
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so like I know you like mentioned like over leveraging, like whenever you making money, right? Do you ever get a sense of greed? Like if you do, like what's something that keeps your mind occupied from like whenever you're making profits, like not over leveraging or like not having that greed mindset?
That's a good question, man. Definitely there's a tendency to get greedy whenever a lot of money is at stake, right? I think specifically, I'll tell you about the last flip we did, right? And I guess there's a hint of greed here, but we put a property on the market for $212,000 and the market's shifting, right? And we got an offer, I think, at like $207,000. And there's a tendency to want to be greedy and just say like, hey, let's just wait it out. But we decided not to at that point and just sell at 207, and whatever we took a haircut on it. We still made money. But I guess I understand, like I look at things now and it's like, hey man, is 5, 6K going to change my life? Is it really going to change the way this year's going? Is it going to change the trajectory? So when I find myself wanting to be greedy, I ask myself that question. And sometimes like in partnerships or in, maybe a dispute that goes on with a vendor or whatever, it's like it's easy to get greedy, or you can just be like, you know what, cool, this really isn't going to change my life. Let's just keep it moving. But aside from that, like I don't really I don't have the desire to like take over the world and like keep all deals to myself and like this is this is my operation and nobody else's. So greed from that aspect, I don't really struggle with that, but definitely I struggle sometimes making like financial decisions, and greed is the emotion that'll kind of get you in that trap.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. And Justin, what would something that you would regret not doing like later on in life?
Later on in life?
Yeah. Like you want to get this thing, like you really want to do this, like before like, your time's up.
Also a good question, but I'm going to go ahead and say I've been saying this for a while, but starting a tech company, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
real estate for me is a means to an end. But along the lines of shiny object syndrome, FOMO, being in these circles, it's easy to also get entrenched in this industry because there's so much potential here. There's a lot to do. But in my heart of hearts, like I want to start a tech company and give it a shot, right? So if I don't do it, I think I would regret it. So that's something that I have yet to do, but I plan to do, and I hope I do.
I like that. All right, I'm gonna be your accountability on that one. 2029.
man.
I'll be like, where's your tech company at, huh?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
We're gonna move on to the ending questions here. So starting with one, if you can go back in time, right, in a time machine, whatever, what would you tell your younger self?
That you're capable. That's what I would tell myself. I spent a lot of my time just building confidence, to speak in front of people, to meet other people. I C student, like didn't really have a whole lot of confidence in myself as far as intellect went. But if I can give myself the cheat code, like way back in the day, I'd tell myself that like, hey man, yeah, you are capable. Like you can do that. You could roll in these circles. That'd be the number one advice I'd give myself.
Nice. And what question would you like to ask your future self?
Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Because there's a lot of sacrifices, man. Like I told you, it's chaotic sometimes, and I sacrifice a lot of pleasure. Being on this podcast, I sacrifice Sunday night with my family.
Yeah.
So like all that stuff plays a role, and when it's all said and done, I would like to know, was it worth it?
Yeah, of course. And second question is, what do you think the secret sauce is to being successful?
There is none.
There's no secret sauce?
There's no secret sauce, man. I think that the sooner you realize that nobody knows what the hell they're doing, everybody's just out there trying to figure it out, and you can too, you'll be on your way. But I don't think there's any secret sauce, man. Just do it. Just get out there and start doing it, man. That's it.
I had this old drill sergeant. He was like an E7, right? And he was like, bro, I'm not an E7, I'm a PV7. There's a difference. I'm like, what do you mean by that? He's like, dude, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. They're just racing up rank. It's like everywhere you go, like you see all these people in higher positions, but like not like they have somewhat of an idea, but they really don't have the whole map in mind. They're just going with the flow. I'm like,
yeah, and that's not to be confused with like, there's no substitution for experience, right? Experience is the best teacher, and a lot of it's specifically the military. You have like senior officers and stuff. They have a whole lot of experience, right? But everybody in the military at least moves every few years. Like everybody's in a constant state of let me figure it out. But what people do better than others is leverage their experience. And they're able to practically apply it, and they're able to ask the right questions and empower the right people to get to an end state, right? So, but like nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. I mean, the president of the United States doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And he has the right people around him or her to figure that out.
Yeah.
So
100%. And
Yeah.
what quote do you live by? Or do you have a quote in your head that you think about some days?
I can't say that I do, man. There's definitely been a host of inspirational, quotes that I've read in my lifetime, but like there's nothing tattooed on my body or on
Oh
my
yeah.
wall
You
that I
got
can think
tattoos?
of on the spot. No tattoos.
Oh, okay. Military guy with no tattoos. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
what books would you recommend for certain situations? I hate what that people recommend one book. So what are a variety of books you would recommend for each parts of your life?
I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. There's been quite a few good ones. I think I just a few off the top. Like I think leadership, general like leadership book that I've really enjoyed was Team of Teams. I think it's a General McChrystal who wrote that. I think that's great. I think that helped me a lot in my military life, but also outside, and that's focused around building a team that knows how to work with other teams and empowering other people and decentralized command, just to drive your mission forward. I think that was good, and it applied in my business life. How to Win Friends and Influence People was great. Base like fundamental finance stuff. The Richest Man in Babylon, right? So like Rich Dad Poor Dad didn't resonate with me, but The Richest Man in Babylon was
Oh, yeah.
eye opening, and I enjoyed the story that he told and how he really just drove home like it's just basic. There's no secret, right? Like it's just basic stuff that the really wealthy people do or the rich people do, and they just do the fundamentals well and consistently, and that's why they're rich. Negotiation, I like Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I think
yeah.
that's great. It's a great listen. And I'll give one more. I hate the title of this book because I don't like kind of like dogmatic, titles, but The Road to Less Stupid is a good book, a really good book. I forget the name of the author, but he's like this super experienced. I think he's like an executive, but he goes into thinking like his big thing is like having thinking time and actually like taking your head out of the minutia and actually being intentional to business and thinking. So The Road to Less Stupid. I think that's enough. There's a bunch here, but there's
I
some
like
good
those.
ones.
I like those. I like that. And before we move on to the last three questions, we have a special segment here called the spinning the wheel, right?
Oh man.
And you physically can't spin it, so I spin it for you. So here we go. Let's see what you get. All right. I know you're a very busy guy, but you do have a favorite movie or a show, correct, Justin?
Hell yeah, I do.
What is it?
My favorite movie is The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh,
100%.
yeah.
I watched that movie on repeat for I'm pretty sure an entire deployment. It was on in the background in my office. So The Wolf of Wall Street.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
You can probably
I love
repeat
them.
some of the lines on there. And third, the third question would be, well, who would you recommend to come to this podcast as well? What's your shout out?
Yeah, so Doug Spence from Honor and Equity. He's a guy in my mastermind at San Diego, naval officer, who is also, on this entrepreneurial path along with many other people. But I think that he'd be a good person to have on here. He's achieved a bunch, in the last few years. So he'd add a lot of value to you.
Gotcha. I'll get him on. And second to last is, what would you like to tell your mother?
What would I like to tell my mother? Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know.
She's listening to this. Let's say she's listening.
Yeah, she will. She will. Yeah, definitely. Definitely love her, right? And thank her for her support. But yeah, I mean, I eventually hope to be able to take this to a point where the whole family's taken care of. But yeah, I really don't really have a specific thing I'd want to tell her, but she's always by my side. She'll be the only viewer of this podcast. So
I love that.
Yeah.
How can people reach out to you? Lastly, yeah, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, you can DM me on Instagram. So at proper pivot, PROPERPIVOT. DM me there, and nobody manages my social media. I do, so I'll see it. That'd be the easiest way.
And why that name? Why profit? What is it? How do you say it again?
Proper pivot.
Yeah, I'm
Proper
trying to
pivot.
read it, but it's backwards on your screen. So
Yeah, my bad. Just because like I didn't really know where I was going to take the business when I first started it, right? So it was just a company, an entity that I stood up because I thought I had to, and good thing I did, right? There's like legal reasons to do it, but yeah, proper is like short for property, and then pivot is just the agile nature of what my business is, right? Ever growing, STR, LTR, wholesale flip, whatever it's going to be, we'll figure it out. We'll change as we go.
gotcha. Love that. And Jack, you have a question here?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
As we get towards the end, Justin, real quick, I remember when we first started this, you had someone in mind. You want to get me information. Nay, get out, close the door. You had someone in mind for like that was in my area that did the flips and
Yeah, I'll send you his contact information off of here because I don't know if he wants the stuff out there, but I'm glad
Yeah.
you reminded me. So I'll send it.
Go to his Instagram, Jack, and send him a message
Yeah.
for Justin. It's a proper pivot, and he'll DM you the person in New Jersey.
sounds
But
good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Justin, for coming on here, and we hope to see you again. And hopefully
Yeah, man.
you have that tech company built.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the opportunity. It's actually the first podcast I've ever been on, so you
Oh,
caught
really?
my cherry. Thanks. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
I like that. All
All
right,
right, man.
I'll see you
Have
later
a good
then.
one.
You too.
Later.
Bye.